Hey everyone, and welcome to my review of The Order 1886. I would like to first start off by addressing the common notion that this game is bad because of the many gaming sites and professional reviewers doing an extremely good job at putting doubt into everyone's minds. Let me just tell you that passing judgment on a game because of reviews is a horrible mistake, and if you're the type of person to go around saying a game is bad just because it got a bad review, then you're nothing but an imbecile and your word means nothing. As for the people who did play this game and still insisted on giving it a lackluster review, I noticed that a lot of the complaints were pretty unwarranted as far as I'm concerned. Many of these so-called professionals seem to be criticizing the game based on what it isn't rather than what it is. A lot of complaints about too much cinematics, no co-op, no multiplayer. The Order 1886 has always been described as a cinematic, story-driven single-player game, and that is exactly what it is. It was never once advertised as a fast-paced, open-world co-op experience or anything like that, yet that's what these reviewers seem to be most concerned about. They aren't reviewing the game based on what it actually is. It's kind of like writing a review of a comedic movie and giving it a bad score because there wasn't enough gore in it. Comedic movies aren't typically supposed to have a lot of gore, so how can one justify scoring it low for that reason? There's no justifying that at all, and that's why I think these negative reviews of this game are flawed. The Order delivers exactly what it promised to deliver since day one. Here are a few examples of what The Order has been described as from official sites and by the developers during its road to release. So on the official PlayStation.com website, The Order 1886 transports players into the stunningly realistic and reimagined neo-Victorian London, replicating the nuances of actual motion picture cameras and lenses for a more immersive and believable presentation. Full performance capture for characters and scenes, combined with seamless transitions between action and story sequences, work together to bring the rich narrative, rife with conspiracy and intrigue, to life. Here's the game described on FinancialPost.com, published May 29, 2014. The Order 1886 wants to be a playable movie, perhaps a bit like Uncharted, but considerably darker, with Hollywood-quality presentation and performances. It's striving to deliver a kind of cover-based gameplay that allows for thought and strategy, but which is spectacular in its staging and appearance. Here's the game described by the game's director, Dana Jan. Dana says, "It's a character-centric, narrative-driven third-person action game. In the visual sense, one of the first things you notice when playing our game is that someone could look at it and almost think you were playing a Blu-ray film rather than a game. Our game has a textural quality because we're using film techniques. Lighting and cinematography are important. The camera's behavior imitates what's done in film by, say, following the character around. It doesn't behave like a sterile procedural camera. It has give and sway. It tries to catch up to you when you move rather than predicting where you will be. It feels like there's a shoulder-mounted camera being worked by a human camera operator. Acting is huge. Nothing screams low-budget or mid-grade video game like bad acting, writing, and dialogue. So we put a lot of effort into those things to make them equal to what you would see in a good movie. If you relate to these characters and they emote like real people, it elevates the craft." Last but not least, here's the game described by the game's tech director, Garrett Foster. Garrett says, "People are going to be immersed and they're going to experience a new world and a new story that hasn't been told before. We mixed gameplay, story, tension, intrigue, cinematics, and immersion. People are going to get a unique experience that they've never seen before." So, based on those descriptions of the game, do you think it delivered on what was promised? Does it offer a truly cinematic experience that is unique in the sense of having an original plot and setting? Was the motion capture and voice acting done well enough that it could be mistaken for a Hollywood movie? If the answer to those questions is yes, which it is, then how can you justify a low score? The game is exactly what they told you it was going to be. The game is exactly what they wanted it to be. If that type of game isn't appealing to you, then you aren't really a credible source for reviewing it. I'm not a huge fan of sports games, and I find baseball to be rather boring. Maybe I should go pick up a copy of MLB The Show 15 when it comes out and write a review of it. Of course it's going to come across negative. I don't even like baseball to begin with, so I'm not really a suitable person to do a review on that type of game, am I? The people who reviewed this game did so while ignoring the fact that this game is designed to be somewhat of an interactive movie. Heavy Rain, The Walking Dead, Beyond Two Souls, Until Dawn, and many more are much in the same league in the sense of being more of an interactive movie rather than a traditional video game. Yet they didn't get the same amount of ridicule and negative press that The Order 1886 has been getting for doing this exact same thing. So I've played through this game, and for my review, I'm going to score it out of 10 using 5 categories. If the game excels in a category, it gets 2 points. If the game fails a category, it gets no points. And if it's sort of in between, then I'll give it 1 point. So with all that out of the way, let's get started on my official review. So starting off with audio visual, the Order 1886 has raised the bar among all platforms, PC included. The level of graphical fidelity in this game is second to none. It's better than The Last of Us, it's better than Rise Son of Rome, it's better than Crysis 3. From a technical standpoint, the level of detail in this game is truly remarkable and without a single dip in performance, and a seamless game from beginning to end with no load screens and nothing more than a quick fade to black screen transition. The Order is a treat to the eyes. Never before have I seen so many textures look so realistic. The suede looks exactly like suede, and the leather looks like leather, the porcelain looks like porcelain, and so on. It's unbelievable. Audibly, this game also delivers an A+ performance from the voice actors as well as the game's well-fitted score. Even the sound effects from the different sounds your gun makes when fired in different environments, to the sounds of your footsteps on different surfaces. The immersion is there, and this game has an unbelievable atmosphere. For audio and visual, the Order 1886 easily gets a full 2 points. Next, we talk about gameplay. The Order has a slow-paced style of gameplay which has been frowned upon by most reviewers, but I'm starting to guess that these so-called reviewers are just dude bros and casuals who only like bro shooters and racing games. The gameplay in the Order is a combination of quick-time events, also known as QTEs, as well as third-person over-the-shoulder gunplay. The performance itself is solid, frames never drop, even in the most hectic and chaotic of fight scenes. The guns each feel and react differently, and there is a nice variety of weapons in the game, from your standard pistols to guns that shoot lightning and everything in between. The enemy's AI is clever enough to hide from your gunfire, and they will also run around and flank you as you hide as well. With a mixture of stealth and loud guns blazing action, the killing in this game is similar to games such as The Last of Us or Uncharted. The quick time events are scattered throughout the game, and they are more in-depth than most critics have led others to believe. It's not just your typical press 1 or 2 buttons when prompted type of QTE. Oftentimes instead you're given options and choices. For example, in a fight with a Lycan, you have multiple attacks that you can use, and then you have to dodge the werewolf attack when prompted. In another situation, you're in a struggle with a man, and during the QTE you have the option to move your cursor towards one of 3 items, in which you will then be given a prompt for an action button, and depending on which item you choose, an appropriate execution will take place. I, for one, am failing to understand why people are frowning so heavily on this method of gameplay. Just like any other game, there is room for error, mistakes lead to failure, a degree of skill is required. To me, it's really no different than any other game. You're using the controller, pressing buttons to execute commands. QTEs are just a cinematic way to complete certain tasks in the game. I feel that the QTEs were woven into the story appropriately, and I felt that they did a great job at allowing the game to maintain its lifelike and cinematic atmosphere, which, as I pointed out, is exactly what the developers intended. So for gameplay, I give the Order 1886 another full 2 points. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the length. One of the biggest criticisms is this game's length, and it comes mainly as a result of a YouTuber who uploaded a speedrun of the game which took him under 6 hours to complete. Like monkeys with marbles for brains, people of the internet took that as some sort of definitive answer to the length of this game, even though it was a speedrun. On average, this game is taking people around 10 hours to beat. This leaves me wondering though, when do we start judging games based on their quantity and not for their quality? For me, it took a total of 11 hours and 51 minutes to completely beat it, meaning earning the platinum. I would say that that is definitely a suitable length for a game of this nature. However, there is a considerable amount of cutscenes throughout the game, and that does pose a bit of an issue. The overall length of the game is fine, but the amount of time you actually spend playing due to the abundance of cinematics is actually a tad disappointing. Even though I thoroughly enjoyed the cutscenes and all of their breathtaking glory, I wish I actually had a bit more control throughout the game, so for that reason, I have to give the Order only 1 point for its length. Next up is the story. It's been a long time that I can remember a story as truly unique as the Order 1886. As far as this generation goes, I would say it's probably the most unique IP so far. Mixing Victoria-era London with the lore of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, and the threat of werewolves in an alternate universe, that's pretty damn appealing. Famous historic figures such as Nikola Tesla, Thomas Edison, and Jack the Ripper all have mentions and or roles in the game, which not only puts some historic believability to the story, but it also gives life to the environment, the people, and the world you're playing in. The story is well written, well acted, and the dialogue is well spoken from beginning to end. And sometimes it's easy to get lost in the story of a game if the developers don't put it together right, but The Order keeps a firm grip on you through all 16 of its chapters. So for its deep immersion, historical references, and its overall uniqueness, I give The Order story a full 2 points. So lastly, I'm going to talk about the overall appeal of the game. The hype train of this game was pretty strong. With a reveal back at E3 2013 and 2 delays after that, this game had a lot of people's interest peaked for quite some time. If you're like me and you didn't over-assume what to expect, then you're probably pretty impressed with what this game has to offer. It's difficult to say that this game is fun because it's hard to imagine fun being sort of slow-paced and dreary, but it was definitely enjoyable. The cinematic sequences were a little much and they did subtract from the overall gaming experience. However, the high-quality gameplay mechanics did make up for that. Once I finished the game, I, like many others, are left hoping for what is probably an inevitable sequel. However, I do hope that if Ready at Dawn is to embark on the journey of continuing this story, that they do consider some of their harshest criticisms of the game and take them into account for any future installments. Needless to say, if people want more, that only goes to show that what they did the first time, they did correctly for the most part. Probably the biggest downfall of this game is its lack of replayability and its value. Being able to play through a game only once with no alternate endings, no different paths to choose, no co-op, and no multiplayer, it's really difficult to be okay with spending the full $60 on this when you can spend the same amount on a game like GTA 5 and basically have an endless amount of playtime. Whether or not this game is worth a buy at $60 is highly subjective. I for one think that the personal experience itself and the level of productivity that went into it is worth $60. This game, after all, is all about quality over quantity, and just like anything else, be it shoes, cars, cosmetics, electronics, you name it, quality costs money. With that said, I can still see how some could come to the conclusion that $60 is still too steep for this specific game, and for that reason I can only give The Order 1886 1 point for its overall appeal. So if you've been keeping track, you'll know that my total score for The Order 1886 is a solid and respectable 8 out of 10. I feel that all of these 6 out of 10 or lower reviews are completely absurd and unjust. Just because a game has multiplayer or co-op doesn't mean it's a good game and deserves a higher score. And just because a game doesn't have multiplayer or co-op doesn't mean it's a bad game that deserves a low score. And just because a game tries to be different with a slow-paced story and cinematics among an overabundance of fast-paced, adrenaline-pumping bro shooters and action games, that doesn't mean it's a bad game. The Order 1886 is simply just different than what people were expecting. And those people, I have to say, are fucking idiots. Because like I said, it delivered exactly what was promised, and it delivered it very well. I feel The Order was reviewed unfairly by many sites who seem to be expecting or hoping for something that they should have already known wasn't there. One thing that confuses me about all of this is how can a game like Flower be sitting at a 91 on Metacritic and The Order is at 65? Flower is a slow-paced game that can be beaten in under 30 minutes, and it costs $10. Putting that into perspective against the value and length of The Order, Flower would cost $110 if it were 5.5 hours long, like The Order apparently is. And these same reviewers who gave The Order 6s gave Flower nothing but an 8, nothing less than an 8. And most of them gave Flower solid 10 out of 10 scores. They never once mentioned that it's too short, or that it's overpriced, or that the controls are too simple. In fact, most of them bought the game again once it was released on PS4, and they played through it a second time and liked it just as much. It has no co-op, no multiplayer, no replay value whatsoever, but it had people raving all day about it, and do you know why? Because they reviewed it for what it actually is. They didn't sit there bitching about what the game doesn't have or what they wanted it to be. They enjoyed the ride as the developers intended it to be. However, for The Order 1886, these reviewers didn't do that at all. Critics and fans alike have been asking for something fresh and new and unique, and even though The Order 1886 borrows mechanics from other games, it executes them very well while maintaining the cinematic experience that it has promised since day one. The common notion among people who are purchasing and beating this game is that it's a solid 8 or higher. My review gives it an 8, a few of the review sites did give it an 8, and word of mouth, Twitch streams, Let's Plays, they're all spreading enough hype that this game has reached #1 on the UK sales charts. I'm sorry, but games with a 65 Metacritic just don't do that. That's proof that the reviews of this game that are anything below an 8 were done by people who really have no clue what goes into a great gaming experience. I asked around Twitter to see what people think, and these are all the answers I was getting. Take my word that I included all the responses I got. I didn't leave out any that were negative. There just weren't any that were negative. So these so-called professional reviewers need to take a step back and realize also that quick time events being woven into the game doesn't make it a bad game. That notion has to go. They need to realize that a game doesn't have to be fast-paced in order to be appealing. Some slow-paced movies are often the best and most interesting. Braveheart, for example, comes to mind. I am in the firm belief that any reviewer that scored this game 6 or lower did a lackluster job and should probably be fired from reviewing games ever again. I really see no justification in a score that low unless you're more concerned about the quantity over the quality. But even then, I would question whether or not you're suitable to be a game reviewer at all. Anyways people, I'm done ranting and reviewing for now. If you like this review, then show your support by clicking the thumbs up button. If you didn't like it, then feel free to click that dislike button, but please leave me a comment below and tell me what you didn't like about it so I can do my best to try to improve for future videos. That's going to be it for me. 8 out of 10 is my score for The Order 1886. Not quite perfect, but it's a solid score for a solid game throughout. I'm Vile Self. I want to thank you guys for watching. Until next time, villains, later.